as well. Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. We are live. Laura and I are back for our fortnightly Tuesday live with you, the fabulous HR community. And I think we've got loads, like so much to talk about today. This could end up being like the next 4 conversations that we have probably, but let's start with our usual. Laura, how are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I think we both said we're a little tired today, and so we get it. I think we're not the only ones feeling a little exhausted. And as usual, Kelly and I were talking about what we wanted to talk about today, and it was hard to pick one word, which is why we see exhaustion, blame, accountability, because it seems to all be interconnected. We've been hearing resentment, we've been hearing blaming and shaming, and again, I know these words have negative connotations, but we really want to talk about them, I think, educationally and constructively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So today we are talking exhaustion, blame, and accountability. Maybe all of them, maybe none of them, maybe all of them and more. We'll kind of see where we go. But I suppose what I want to start with, and I delivered a talk last week and started with this, and I think just acknowledging where we are today, I think is a really kind of key point to get us started with. So, like, I recognize that, again, for all of us in the HR talent, all of us in the people community at the moment are exhausted in one way, shape or another. Some of us have been dealing with mass redundancies. Some of us have been dealing with furlough. Some of us have been faced with redundancies. Some of us are going through huge growth within our organizations. I know a load of my clients have been dealing with kind of mergers and acquisitions and growth, and in some cases feeling guilty about that because they've seen what else is going on in other organizations and what else is going on across the HR sector as a whole. And I think wherever you are today, acknowledge it. And then I think we can start to get into the other topics that we're going to talk about today. Like, the last 12 months feels like it has been yeah it's like, you know, kind of
literally
all day take 10,000.
Yeah, and I want to add to that because I think the other thing I'm noticing about acknowledgement is and I speak from my own experience here as well. It's acknowledging the growing pains of this year. And in HR, you and I are both seeing so many really wanting to be strategic, right? I'm a strategic partner. I'm data-led. And yes, of course. But for many, that's new. And for many, that's an unlearning. They're coming from a transactional background. They're coming from having been taught that HR is a service business and not a partnership. And they're coming from that like servant mentality. And again, no shame. It's just, that's an unlearning. And there's growing pains with that because it's hard to transition to a new philosophy, to a new approach, to a new style. And I think this pandemic has catapulted that where everyone feels like they have to do that right now. Obviously, they do. But then they're not acknowledging that that's a little tricky or a little uncomfortable and they have questions about it. And so instead of actually just saying, hey, Laura, bear with me. I've been in HR 15 years. This concept of being heart-led and people-led and partnership-led is new to me. I might have some questions and some challenges. They're instead kind of armoring up, and then the behavior, which we'll talk about, is changing in such a way that I worry that it's probably just based in fear and maybe discomfort.
Yeah.
I'm not acknowledging that either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just before we go any further, let's acknowledge we've got Sue with us and Floor with us. Hey. Again, if you've got questions, if you want us to kind of tackle anything, let us know and we'll kind of talk it through. But that acknowledgement, acknowledging everything about where we are, acknowledging what's hard, acknowledging what's easy, acknowledging what we're finding a challenge, acknowledging everything.
Yeah.
Laura says she has got a question. Maybe it would be helpful if HR formulates what they would need from their business partners in order to help them with this growth so they can actively help and support them. Yes, and I think Laura and I have got probably a flip of that as well that we can maybe talk about today as well. Not only what they need from their business partners, but actually what they need from managers, leaders, what we need from each other. Like, what is it that we need from each other? What do we need from everybody else in the people community?
Yeah,
And
it literally
I've been tackling this for months, haven't we?
I mean, it literally just needs to be an I don't know that, or I am uncomfortable, this is new for me. I don't hear that enough. This doesn't have to be a big strategic buzzwordy thing. You could just say to whoever you're dealing with, whether it's your partner, your recruiting partner, your HR associate, your leader, just the bravery to say, you know, this is a new concept for me. I'm working on it. It's a little uncomfortable. I mean, you know, like think about, okay, in recruiting, I'll give you an example. So when I'm working with a new leader and they're telling me that they believe in diversity and equity and inclusion and they believe in fairness and they believe in candidate experience, but then their behavior is so self-absorbed, I'll tell them that's a hypocrisy, right? We're saying we value one thing, we're doing something else. So, for example, one thing that we can do is build out a competency-based interview guide where we have core competencies we're measuring and then we evaluate each candidate on those competencies. That's new for a lot of HR leaders. They've never recruited that way. Of course it's uncomfortable if it's new. Of course it's a transition if it's new. It's better to say, this is a new concept for me. I'm going to have some questions. I might be a little insecure about it. I might have some fears about it. But instead, because that's hard for them to say, they might just put up the wall. And now they've blocked it, they've blocked the learning, and then we can't move forward. So
we spoke about this a few weeks ago, didn't we, in terms of this growth mindset, fixed mindset. And so I think if we, I suppose if we kind of take it back a bit, and again, Laura and I had this conversation yesterday, when we get to the point, I think what I am seeing, and we can talk about blame and accountability, and we'll definitely talk about this.
I don't know why my camera's blurry, by the way, but we'll deal with that.
Laura's gone blurry. All right. Flo, we'll talk about this kind of safety and this vulnerability as well. That I think that's absolutely key. But I think I want to take it back a step to start with. I think what we are seeing, again, whether we are busy, stressed, tired, angry, frustrated, you know, whatever it is that we are feeling, whether we are trying to get to grips with the learning, whether we are, you know, trying to navigate our way through everything that it is that we're going through, I would love for us to be able to take a step back. And I suppose from a brain perspective, from a neuroscience perspective, whenever we get to that point, and this comes back to the self-care that Laura and I talk about repeatedly, and it is this kind of vicious cycle. If we are not doing the self-care, at times when things become more difficult for us, I'll use my glass, but my kind of glass, let's imagine like this is our stress bucket, right? So everything is going to fill up in this stress bucket. If we are not doing the self-care, we cannot empty this whilst we're asleep at night. And if we cannot empty this, we're waking up more in the mornings and we are feeling more anxious and we are feeling more stressed and we are feeling more frustrated. And in many ways, that's what causes this blame and this fear and this, you know, lack of wanting to be vulnerable, lack of acknowledging where we are, lack of asking these questions, because we're just going through this kind of anxious point repeatedly. Right. So
and that's the amygdala, right? That's the part of our brain that's like,
absolutely, yeah. But we go into I suppose what I kind of like the prehistoric, the kind of primal part of our brain when we go into this kind of fear stuff. And when we're in that primal part, we cannot make good decisions. We cannot see the bigger picture because we're constantly in that kind of fight or flight response. And whilst we're in that fight or flight, all we're kind of doing, or kind of like fight, flight, or freeze, we're either freezing and not doing anything about it, we're fighting, and this is where all of this blame is coming from, or we're trying to run from it and saying, actually, I'm not there yet. And it is this vicious circle, because the more that then happens, the more we tend to then push and work hard and continue to strive and continue to go and continue to go and continue to go. So we then have less time for our self-care, less time to look after ourselves, less sleep, more stress, all of those sorts of things. We continue to stay in that primal part of our brain. And actually what we need to do is stop, take a breath, look at the bigger picture and try and get ourselves back into the logical, rational part of our brain, where we're then not blaming, where we're not coming at things from a place of fear, where we're not worrying about things constantly. And then when we can look after ourselves more and do all of the things that make us feel good, then we break the cycle. But something has to break the cycle.
I love this. It's so funny. In my notes, when we first were talking before this, I wrote fight, flight, or freeze, because I was thinking that we both know Sarah Noll Wilson. She's a friend of mine in Iowa. She studies neuroleadership. She has a video on her YouTube channel about the amygdala. It's like a 3-minute video, and she described it like a chihuahua kind of barking in your brain. And Kelly and I are a nerd, as most of you know, for reading self-help books, self-improvement books, neuroleadership books, psychological science books, sociology books. I mean, we love the study of behavior. And what's really interesting about the brain, and again, I am not a scientist, I'm just speaking from my own reading. So this fear, like Flora is saying, how can you establish it'll be safe enough for HR to be vulnerable in that way? So our brain thinks we're being attacked by a bear, right? It's that same, we literally have that same biological response. But if you think about it logically, you're just telling someone you're struggling to understand competency-based interviewing. A bear is not coming to eat you alive. So the fear should not be the same, but it is, because we don't stop and just giggle almost about it and say, what the heck am I talking about? A bear's not running in this boardroom. I'm simply telling them that I need another head count on my team, or that I don't understand the applicant tracking system, or that we want to get this ATS and not that one. Like, these are not life or death situations. So when you say safe enough, I mean, my heart literally beats faster, because you're totally safe enough. We are all safe enough. It's HR. We are not in the woods. We are not being chased by coyotes. I think we have to acknowledge that it's okay. We are safe. We're safe with each other. We should probably talk about it more. I don't know, Kelly, what's the antidote to that anxiety?
I think sometimes we just have to try it.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes we have to try it, and sometimes we have to give it a go. So again, the kind of bear analogy. I know when I did my kind of neuroscience training, we kind of use the analogy of the polar bear, all of those sorts of things. But it's like, imagine you are crossing the road, right? And sometimes there will be signs telling you that it's safe, and sometimes there will be signs telling you that it's not, and sometimes there will be no signs at all. And actually, you've got to look. And sometimes you might put a foot out into the road, and then you might, a car or a truck or something might come past you. So you take a step back. We're not going to know that it's safe enough sometimes unless we are prepared to take that first step.
I love that. It's a risk, right? It's a brave risk.
Just absolutely not. And we, again, our head will tell us all sorts of different things, right? So I don't know, Laura and I with this situation, like, what if nobody watches? What if we say the wrong thing? What if we come across really stupid? What if this happens? If we're constantly in those what if situations, we wouldn't be here. Right? Sometimes you just have to take that risk, and sometimes you might take it a step too far. And again, I think that's when it is hands up. I ran a bit too quickly. My fault. I'm learning. Help me fix it next time. Sometimes it'll be absolutely spot on, but unless you take that step, you're just not going to know. You're absolutely not going to know. And I think that's where some of this scary stuff can come from, because the what ifs in our heads, and I can probably give you a couple of different scenarios. Like, over the last 12 months, wasn't one of my coaching clients at the time, but then came and started to work with me. I spoke to a woman who was an HR director who had seen a lot of the stuff that I had been talking about, and went to ask her CEO for help. Right? I am struggling. This is what I need. And within that meeting, or by the end of that meeting, the HRD had been demoted, told that she shouldn't be in the role that she is in, that she shouldn't know what she shouldn't, if she's that struggling that much, she shouldn't be in the job. Take a demotion. This is what it's going to be. She's absolutely devastated. On the flip of that, another one of my HRD clients started coaching with me, had the conversation with the CEO, said, I'm really struggling. This is what I need. And the CEO, okay, right. Nobody's ever in HR asked for help before. Sit down. Let's talk about what it is that you need. Let's make all of that happen. Now, in both of those situations, the HRD was struggling. In both of those situations, they genuinely thought that speaking to the CEO was the right thing to do, and it absolutely was. But both of them have ended up in very, very different situations. But they won't know, you won't know the outcome of any of these situations unless you give it a go. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes you will not get the decision or the outcome that you want. With that first CEO that I've spoken about, for me, that CEO should not absolutely not be a CEO. If a member of your team has come to you to say, I am struggling because of X, Y, and Z, and your instant reaction is to demote them, you do not deserve the position of CEO.
I hope she gets a new role, Kelly. I hope she finds a new company.
Totally. And, the second one listened, acknowledged, gave everything that they possibly could, acknowledged that there was an issue, and they went for it. So this stuff isn't hard. And, Laura was talking at the beginning about this kind of growing pains. I'm hugely of the belief, I know Laura is as well, we grow on the other side of our comfort zone. If we stay in this comfortable place where we never challenge, where we never stand up, where we never question, where we never go into that vulnerability, where we never explore that safety, it's all very well, kind of staying in this little spot and, I'm safe and everything's fine. If you want growth, you got to go past that. And there will be growth pains and there will be growing pains. And sometimes it will be really hard. And sometimes it will be really easy. And sometimes you will wish that you had stayed in that comfort zone and never even started this process in the first place. But if you keep on going, the rewards are absolutely there. There are absolutely huge rewards on the other side of our comfort zone. And there's just amazing, amazing stuff to see. But, we won't know unless we try.
I think there are going to be a lot of people listening to that story and panicking like, uh-oh, that's what I'm worried about. I'm going to tell my CEO I need something and they're going to demote me. To which I would say that's probably not the right organization for you. It's like being in a marriage or a friendship where you speak up based on your values, based on your needs and wants, and you stand in your own power, and that person is unable or unwilling to deliver that, it may be time to move on. And so if anything, I find that story empowering, hopefully, and I'm sure you've coached her on that she should be considering finding an environment that is willing to invest in her. But it sounds depressing until you think about it, like maybe it's a good sign that it isn't working. I think for anyone who's been through a divorce or the end of a friendship or the end of a job, there comes a point when you're standing in your truth and your values and that party is not able to deliver, you move on.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't not speak up because then you're resenting the whole thing.
Yeah, and again, and you are stuck, and then you will go to blame, and you will continue to blame, and you will continue to push things out. You will stay in that kind of primitive part of your brain. You will go through all of the what if situations. You will stay in that fight, flight, or freeze moment. You cannot move forward. And again, I think for me, I do have this kind of belief again that I think if we're not moving forwards, we're going backwards. I don't necessarily think there is any such thing as kind of staying still, because ultimately, as everything else moves forwards, even where we were starts to look very, very backwards. And I think that's what starts to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the transition from transactional service HR to strategic partnership HR is a big step. And when you were talking about safety, I wrote down a quote that I love that I forgot about till right now, which is, a ship is safest in its harbor, but that's not what ships are made for.
No.
So you can sit in your harbor as an HR director and just kind of hope that nobody notices you're just sitting there. But eventually, you've got to go off to sea, and it's going to be rocky and bumpy, and you will be vulnerable, and you will be scared. And the other quote I love that I've heard recently, I don't know if it's Glennon Doyle, I'm sure you've seen it around, Kelly, but it's, scared is what I'm feeling, brave is what I'm doing. It's like you can feel scared and be brave at the same time.
I think that might be a Glennon. I might be completely wrong, but it might be a Glennon.
Like you could be feeling scared to be vulnerable, like what Flora is saying. Of course, it's, again, your brain thinks you're being attacked by a polar bear. You're not, so you're safe, but it still feels scary, and that you can be proud that you accomplished that. And again, we're not talking about math. We're talking about asking for help in HR. Whether it's you need more headcount, you need a coach, you need training, you need a new tech software, you need a day off. Okay, we're not asking for something so crazy. You're just standing up for yourself and for your team. What's amazing to me is that even doing that as women is so scary that we associate that with being attacked by a bear. So we do, and so we have to work through it. We have to acknowledge it. But I think the more we talk about it with each other, the easier it gets. And Kelly and I do it with each other all the time. I'll leave her a voice message on WhatsApp and be like, I did something brave today, and she'll text me back something brave. Because we have to celebrate these wins when we stand up for our values and our worth and stand up for the people that we lead, and it's important.
And it can feel scary, right? Sure. When you are in. But when you're in that place of value, particularly, I suppose, when you're in that place of values, and Laura and I again have spoken about this on other chats from a business perspective. Laura and I have both said no to potential clients because they are not aligned with our values, and then again that part of your voice, but that would have paid your bills, that would have bought you a holiday, that would have done this, that would have done this, that would have done this, that would have done this. And you can stay there, but actually if we say yes to everything that isn't aligned to our values, we're never going to be able to do the stuff that is. And we've got to go for it. It is that kind of, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the conversations that we play in our heads, if we have, our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination, right? If I am thinking about asking for help, right? So today I'm going to go into my CEO and I'm going to say, this is what I need, or I've got a meeting with the CEO on Friday and the CEO has asked me to go into that meeting and say what it is that I need. The more that I play that meeting round and round and round in my head, my brain doesn't know whether I've been in that meeting or not. So potentially by the time I have that conversation, I've played it over 50 or 100 times in my head already. And probably 50 or 100 times I have played out worst case scenario. But my brain doesn't know whether I'm in the room or not. So I think, quite a lot of my clients again, the kind of what if statement, what if this happens? What if I am demoted? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And I always kind of say, what if statements can also be really positive, right? What if you get the help you need?
Yeah.
What if it's not as scary as you thought it would be? What if it may have felt vulnerable before you went in there, but actually it then felt really empowering when you were able to say what it was that you needed to say? What if...
That's what happens, by the way.
Whoever it is that you're asking, just can wave this magic wand and take all of this stress away for you. Like these what if statements, we tend to go to what if worst case scenario. But if we can flip that, every worst case will have a best case. So what if we get the promotion? What if we get the pay rise? What if we get the holiday? What if we get more people? What if there is a little bit of a compromise? What if we start looking at new systems? What if we, can start exploring working with coaches? What if can also be really, really positive.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to think about that this week because I think all of our brains do it. So thank you, Sue. She let us know that quote, that scared is what I'm feeling, brave is what I'm doing, is from Emma Donahue. So I will look her up after, Sue, and I appreciate that. Okay, I wanted Kelly to talk to us because I have been struggling with the word accountability. And I think it's because I'm a one-woman business. So I guess I take it for granted that I hold myself accountable for the work that I do. But what we're noticing in HR is for those who are feeling this exhaustion we just spoke about, and then not knowing what to do with that feeling of fear and feeling of discomfort, there seems to be some issues with accountability. So Kelly, I wanted you to first explain, like, what is accountability and where is it showing up that we're seeing it?
Yeah, and I suppose again, I'll take a step back and go back to when I was in my corporate career. So I think sometimes within our organizations, we talk about responsibility and accountability almost interchangeably. Like, you're responsible for this, you're accountable for this, you're this, you're this. And I think a lot of the time what we see in organizations are our senior leaders telling us that we are accountable. So Laura, you are accountable for the TA within our organization. You are accountable for the recruitment budget within our organization. You are accountable for all of these things. But actually, for me, the big difference is you may be responsible for it, but in order for me to hold you to account and in order for you to be made to feel accountable, I kind of have to give you all of the rest of the stuff that goes with that as well. Right? So that might be the decision making. That might be, I don't know, all of the trust that goes with it. That might be when you are accountable for it, you make all of the decisions, the buck stops with you, this is everything that's going to happen. But I think what we do in a lot of organizations is we say, Laura, you are accountable, but actually I don't give you the accountability because I don't give you any of the decision making, because you still have to go through this chain of command and chain of decision. So I tell you that you're accountable.
Okay.
But actually I'm still holding all of that accountability. And I think that's one thing that we need to look at from an interchangeable perspective. So you may be responsible for the budget, but if you are accountable for it, in my mind, you have everything else that goes along with it. So that's all of the expenditure, all of the decision making, all of the trust, everything sits with you.
Okay. So we're seeing a lot of HR leaders feeling like they don't have the power that they're to do, and to, like, leaders are telling them that they're accountable, but then they don't feel like they have the power to actually get anything done.
And in some cases they don't. Right. I had some projects when I was HRD that, Kelly, you are accountable. You are the accountable person for these billion pounds projects, right? But ultimately when it came to it, with some of those projects, with every decision that needed to be made, I had to take those questions and everything to a board for that board to make the decisions. That was not accountability. That was me having responsibility for the project, and accountability sat with this group. And so I think sometimes we need to distinguish that. If somebody says you are accountable for something, are you really?
Yeah.
How do I know that? What does that accountability look like? What does it feel like? What does it mean when you are going to hold me to account for the things that I'm doing?
Okay.
And I think then, similarly to you, Laura, I think when I first started my business, I was like, well, I'm not accountable to anybody anymore, right? So I could pick and choose my hours. I could pick and choose how I worked, but I could do all of this stuff. However, yes, I am accountable to myself. I'm still accountable to all of my clients. And that may be for meeting deadlines, that may be for going back to them when I say it would do it, maybe for delivering what it was that I said that I was going to deliver. It could be anything. And a lot of that does sit with me. Potentially, I don't know. If I went to a client and said, that thing I said I was going to have for you by Friday, actually, I'm really sorry, it's going to be the week after. I'd probably say 90% of them would probably say, Kelly, no problem, don't worry about it. But actually, if that then becomes my go-to, or that becomes the way that I'm working, I think then all of a sudden I become the untrustworthy person, because every time Kelly gives us a deadline, it's always a week later.
I'm going to Google the definition of accountability.
Go for it.
But also, so where are we seeing it showing up? Because hold on, of course it's giving me the definition of account.
I think, again, where we are seeing it showing up is...
wait, hold on. This is good.
Go for it.
This is helpful. Okay, Webster's Dictionary defines accountability as an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility for one's own actions. It's a willingness to accept responsibility for our own actions. Okay.
And I think that's why we can't, I think it was somebody said to me maybe, I don't know, 10 odd years ago, I can hold you to account, but I can't give you accountability.
Yep. And this is maybe why it's been tying in with blame when you and I have been talking. Blaming would be I'm putting the responsibility and onus on you. Accountability would be looking at myself.
Yeah.
And so now for everyone listening in HR, bear with us. We say whatever we're going to say right now with loving kindness. There is an issue here of not holding accountability in HR and sometimes blaming others.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're seeing it within HR, right? I'm in recruiting, I blame the HR business partner. I'm in the business partner, I'm going to blame TA.
Yeah.
I don't know why there's that.
This isn't every HR team, this isn't every HR professional, but we are definitely seeing it more and more. And I think when we go back to what we were saying at the beginning, when we are in that fight, flight, freeze, it is very difficult for us to be able to look at ourselves. It is very difficult for us to see the logical, rational side of everything that is going on for us. When we are in fight, flight, freeze, we are looking for the bear. We are looking for that external thing and blaming that external thing for how we feel,
our discomfort,
for our discomfort, for our fear, for anything else. And what Laura and I have been seeing, sadly, repeatedly, is this blame. It's TA's fault for not doing this. It's HR's fault for not doing this. It's the manager's fault for not managing properly. It's the leader's fault for not giving enough direction. It's all of this stuff. And actually what we have been seeing, I would probably say more so this year, Laura, if you would agree, but I think more so probably since the new year, the blame is also getting very angry. Very angry. It's not just, oh, Laura, you know, you forgot to do this today, or, well, you know, Laura should have done that yesterday. It's not even that point. It is getting to the point of anger and frustration and shouting and upset and blame.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious about, okay, I agree. I think everyone here could agree that when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, and we believe a bear is chasing us in the woods, if we aren't self-reflective enough to calm down and get back into logic, rational thinking, we are at risk of blaming external people for our discomfort. That is biology, and it's happening. What I'm curious about is how we can help each other get better at keeping it within as accountability to ourselves. So first, do we have to notice it? Ooh, I'm blaming Barbara in that department. Why? What's coming up for me here?
I think, yes, there is that awareness and there is that acknowledgement. But I also think whilst we are in that 500 miles an hour fight, flight, or freeze, we can't always have that level of awareness and acknowledgement because I'm just doing it.
Yeah, so we have to slow down.
10,000 miles an hour. I'm continuing to go 10,000 miles an hour. And whilst I'm going 10,000 miles an hour and I'm stressed and I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I'm angry and I'm sad and all of this stuff, whilst I'm in that, I'm just continuing to blame because it's your fault that you've sent me too many emails. It's your fault that I don't have my budget signed off. It's your fault that this hasn't happened. It's your fault that I don't have goals and objectives. It's your fault that, you know, you're disagreeing with home working. It's your fault that you haven't filled the roles. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. And whilst we're in that, and I'm continuing to blame you for or everybody else for everything, I'm not in that logical enough space to say, oh, I've just blamed everybody. There has to be, I believe, there has to be that moment, whether it is just a moment, whether it is a breath, whether it is going for a walk, something, but that moment that allows us to go back to logical, rational, oh my God, I've just spent the last 2 hours blaming Laura for all of this stuff that is going on. What can I now do about it?
Yeah.
But whilst I'm in it and I'm frantic and you're in front of me or I'm in front of you or I'm going through my emails or whatever, I don't believe, certainly not from my experience, and I don't think from a lot of my clients, I do not believe that trigger of, oh my God, I've just been blaming Laura, would happen.
Okay.
Because again, that's that, you know, whilst you're running from the bear, right? Whilst I'm running from the bear, I'm not thinking, maybe the bear's already eaten. Maybe the bear just wants to say hi, right? I'm not thinking that, because I'm thinking I need to get away from this bear as quickly as I possibly can do. I've got to keep running. It's only when the danger has gone and I can then breathe and it's like, oh, right, maybe the bear already had its breakfast.
This is coming together for me. Okay, I'm going to summarize what I'm learning from you and with you right now. Okay. We are all exhausted in HR. There is a fatigue. We are in a pandemic. It's been a year. We are in growing pains. We are learning how to be more strategic, forward-thinking, and innovative. So all of this is exhausting. Instead of slowing down, reducing the frantic, frenetic, too busy, overwhelmed energy in order to regroup and gain accountability and bring kindness and heart into the job, we are instead stuck in fight, flight, freeze, panic, bear, oh my God, overwhelmed, too busy, too frantic, too frenetic. And then we're blaming each other and the toxicity is starting to spiral. And so we're noticing it, we're addressing it so that you don't feel alone if you're noticing it. And I think what we have to do is encourage each other to slow it down just a notch. Because growing doesn't mean running all the time. You have to sometimes pause and rest and take a beat, drink your water, have your banana, and continue. This is not like a marathon without pausing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can't run, right? You cannot train for a marathon without rest days. You cannot.
We're not resting in here.
We're not resting. And we cannot, like, if anybody that wants to improve their performance, again, you know, sports analogies, whatever it is that we want, top performing sports teams, athletes, you know, footballers, runners, tennis players, basketball, whatever, they cannot be at the absolute top of their game if they do not take the rest. From a physical perspective, our muscles need the rest in order to rebuild, because actually every time we're kind of breaking down muscle, that's exactly what we're doing. Like every time we push, we are tearing our muscles, right? So our muscles need the time to start rebuilding so that next time we do the activity and we tear them, they can keep rebuilding. We cannot, like, nobody in a top performing anything would say to you, well, you know, I just train full pelt, you know, 365 days a year, I'm out there and I'm pushing and I'm doing everything that it is that I want to do. Nobody would tell you that. Every single person that is at the top of their game in anything, be it acting, running, presenting, sport, coaching, CEO, anybody that is at the top of their game doing anything will tell you the importance of rest.
Yeah. So I hear, like, I love the phrase you just said, like the power through and the pushing. I worry that HR directors, leaders, professionals at all levels sort of take pride in the hustle. There's almost I've been working nonstop for a year with no breaks, pushing frantically. Like, it's not a badge of honor because you're actually starting to behave poorly. And that's my main concern. I mean, look, self-care and yes, all of that. Your inner body, our bodies, our minds, our souls, they're worthy of our attention. Unfortunately, when we neglect that and then we are burning out, we're now starting to affect the people around us. And we do bring energy into our teams.
Well, and again, we've been told that we've been taught that we cannot succeed unless we are hustling. right? We've got to hustle if you want to succeed. You've got to hustle, you've got to do this, that, and the other. I had a conversation with a guy last week, and this was about 4-day weeks. Again, you'll know, within the Chrysalis crew, we've been working 4-day week for 2 years.
Yeah.
And he said that he was having a really interesting conversation with some friends, just over dinner. You know, why would you want to, like, from his perspective, why would you want to push anybody into a 4-day week? Nobody is going to be able to get to the top of their game if they're only working a 4-day week, because everybody knows that you have to be flat out if you want to succeed. And he was like, you know, I'd really love your view on that. And it was okay, fine. I spent 13 years of my career pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Now I can say I had a lot of success. You know, over a 7-year period, I added 100K to my salary. I had 6 promotions in 7 years, 8 promotions in 7 years, you know, added 100K to my salary, you know, did all this stuff. On paper, was I successful? Absolutely. Internally, I was miserable, and ultimately I got to burn out. The last 7 years, we run my, you know, I've got 2 businesses, I've got everything. Now, I think we've got to start with what our definition of success is. If your definition of success is the money and the status and the burnout, go for it. You will absolutely need to be working 16, 18, 20 hours a day to get you to that point, to keep pushing, to keep hustling, to keep doing what it is that you need to do. You will end up in burnout. If that's your end goal, go for it. If, however, success is more about balance and success, you know, I'm still, you know, thankfully, touch wood, I'm still earning money. I'm still working with people. I earn a good, you know, I bring in, generate a good living. I take regular breaks. I do everything that I need to do. I spend more time now with my sons than I ever did when they were younger. I feel more successful now than if you'd have asked me 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And that's not to say we can't earn the money and have the role and have the status, but I pushed too hard because, you know, and partly for this conversation, I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't want anybody to think I was failing. I was, you know, I was a woman. In some cases, I was the only female director within the organizations. I was the only one with young kids. And in my head, I had got myself in the mindset of, I do not want to be, you know, the only woman on this board and not succeeding. I do not want to be the only person with young children and not succeeding. And so I kind of got into this, you know, I need to be superwoman in order to be able to have everything. And it literally almost killed me. Like the conversation that we are having today, I am speaking from experience.
Yeah.
It almost killed me. And yet now I'm earning more, I'm working less, I'm happier, I'm spending more time with my family, I'm fine. I do not need to be killing myself 7 days a week in order to make that happen. Because actually what I have learned is, and it's, you know, everybody talks about the cliche, but I have learned to work smarter, not harder. I do not chase, like you and I have said, we've said no to clients recently. I don't have to chase clients anymore. I don't have to chase business. I don't have to chase people. I just get to do what I love doing. And I'm working with amazing people and I'm doing all of the stuff that I need to do. I do, like, chasing and killing myself in the process is, for me, that's not success.
Yeah. And I think that the chasing is often self-imposed because we are literally, Brene Brown refers to it as hustling for worthiness. So like what I'm learning is that, yeah, if you're an HR director and you're just hustling and never stopping and you're overwhelmed, it's really important to look inward first and say, what is this about? Because you're right, Kelly, the times in my life that I worked 12-hour days and wanted to be the top performer, and I was, you know, all those things I was striving for, they weren't, it's not like I had someone above me, like, demanding that of me. It was all self-imposed. It was my own, you know, desire to be the teacher's pet, the best one, the number one, the top person. I am an overachiever. I am an overfunctioner. I am guilty as charged. And it's taken me time to realize that that's wonderful. It makes me a successful entrepreneur, but it also comes with an ability to self-reflect and check myself when when I'm overdoing it. What has concerned me about the behavior we're talking about here, this exhaustion leading to blame, is that instead of pausing and saying, what is coming up for me? What is this telling me about myself? I think we're seeing too many HR and people leaders just starting to put it out to the others, to blame the others. So it's kind of like Brene Brown talks about power over versus power with. Like, it's almost like, well, now I'm frustrated and overwhelmed, so I'm going to power over people and be that kind of blaming, cranky leader. But they probably don't even like being the blaming, cranky leader, and yet it's happening. So it's almost like, I think of a tornado, and someone actually sent me a tornado emoji the other day in recruiting, because he said, I feel like this is what it feels like lately. And I said, oh gosh, it does. And I'm so glad I'm speaking to Kelly this week, because they're running around the office like a tornado. And then they're doing damage on the pathway, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, they're struggling as the swirling wind, but they're actually hurting other people. And if I asked an HR leader if they want to be a tornado in an office, they would say no, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah. And I think there is a, like, hurt people.
Yeah.
Right? Hurt people.
That's really hard.
I think some of this blame, again, is coming from the exhaustion and everything else. I think some of it is from us not feeling, and again, we've spoken about this, I don't know, like umpteen times before, but some of it, I think, is also this, like, not feeling worthy. Like, I don't feel worthy of a salary increase. I don't feel worthy of a promotion. I don't feel worthy of help or support or acknowledgement or whatever. And so again, some of this blame is, well, what, you know, why is it, Laura, that, you know, your team always get all of the help? Why do you always get all of the help? Why do you always get the money? Why do you always get the budget? Why do you always get all of this stuff? And actually, I'm not getting any of it. And some of that, again, is because I'm not asking for it. And I'm not asking for it because I don't feel worthy of it. Yeah. And then because you're getting what I want, I then become resentful of you. And then, well, if you've got all of this money and all of this research and all of this support and all of this rah, 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 why aren't you doing your job properly? Because actually you should be. And then comes more anger, more frustration, more blame, more hurt. And I chuck all of that at you as well, because you've got what I want. You've probably got what I want, but firstly, because you've asked for it. You've said, hey, I'm struggling. I need additional headcount. I need a coach. I need whatever, you know, I need a new system. I need whatever. And it's been looked at, and it maybe budgets have been signed off. Maybe it's been for board approval. Maybe you got an immediate yes. But I then sit there resentful because nobody's helping me. Yeah. Nobody's giving me anything. And I am struggling and I am tired. And again, I think some of it is that as well, because I don't feel worthy of the help. Yeah. I don't feel worthy of the support. I don't feel worthy of the salary increase. But as soon as I see you get a salary increase, I'm going to blow my top, because you never do your job properly. You never fill all the vacancies on time. You never do this. You know, you never do what I ask you to do. You never. So then I go into, again, this fierce hate because, you know, Laura's never performing 100%. And why is it that Laura gets a salary increase? Well, guess what? Because Laura was performing at 97% and Laura asked for it and Laura got it.
It's so interesting how this shows up in HR hiring. So let's say you're an HR leader who doesn't believe you're worthy of a raise because you're not as important as legal or finance. And yes, I hear people say that. So you never asked for one and you've been there 15 years and you're miserable and resentful. And now you're hiring for your own team. But all these new people from the outside are confident, standing in their power, standing in their worthiness, strategic, forward-thinking HR, and their comp is higher than yours. So now what do? So a confident, self-aware HR leader goes to their CFO and says, wow, the market's showing people are earning a lot more. I'm happy to bring them in at that level, but I'm going to need an increase as well. But the resentful, bitter HR leader just blames the candidate. I can't believe what they're asking for. Who's paying them that? They're absurd to ask for that. I see this behavior daily, okay, not only with people I'm working with, but people I'm speaking with, and it's a problem. The other place I'm noticing it is is in an HR team. So let's say a recruiting team is overwhelmed. So corporate recruiters, some of them are working on 40 or 50 requisitions. We could do a whole hour on this. It's obscene, because to have 50 requisitions on your plate means you have 5 candidates per job. So you have 250 candidates who need your attention and love and support through the process. So if you say you believe in candidate care, you're already messed up. There's just no way. So candidates get ignored because, of course, the recruiter can't possibly deliver that. Mm-hmm. The recruiter feels guilt because they're like, I can't possibly do my job well. I'm overwhelmed. There's no way. They're crying to me. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to give candidates what they need. They're needing more than I can give. Hiring managers are frustrated. These jobs aren't getting filled. So I say to them, so what have you done to get additional headcount? Like, who have you asked? How have you presented this data? Because even just that, have you even said that? Like the 250, I always offer that. I haven't ever proposed it that way. Okay. If I then go to a CFO or a CEO and explain this scenario, did you know your recruiting team is burning out? Did you know they're understaffed? Did you know that they're not able to deliver to the hiring manager or to the candidate? Do you know what they always say? Why haven't they told me? Of course they can have a couple extra people. Of course they can have a higher external search firm budget. Of course they can hire coaches and trainers if they need it. But that team is so busy spinning in their tornado to even stop, as you say, stop to breathe, stop to walk, stop to think. Then go over there and say, here's what I need. And so instead, the behavior gets worse and worse and worse. And candidates get hurt, and hiring managers get hurt, and HR business partners get hurt. And I feel like what we're talking about right now is so, and there's a New York City siren. It's so what's the word? Like, it's just so real right now. It's like, this is so,
it's
like,
everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And again, like, I think, like I've said to you, some of it I think is, like, everybody's exhausted. We've all been through our own journey. I also think, and again, you and I have spoken about this a lot, we are absolutely recognizing that what was working, or what we deemed to be working, now isn't.
Right.
But we don't know how to do it differently.
Yeah.
And so again, that fear, coupled with some of the exhaustion, coupled with new expectations, coupled with everything that we've been dealing with over the last 12 months, I think that definition that you gave of that kind of tornado, I think is absolutely spot on. Everything is getting caught up in everything at the minute. Everything is just being caught up. And we don't know how to take a step back.
Yeah.
Because whilst the power of that tornado just keeps going and going and going and going and going, you can't jump off it. You can't, but actually we can. We can choose to say, I need a breather. I need to reflect. I need to look at what's happening. And you and I both know this isn't an easy thing to do. But when we see this stuff coming up, like, what is coming up for me right now? What is this bringing up for me right now? What is this reflecting in me right now? Now, you and I have been doing this for years. We've had a lot of help to get us, to help us get to the point of asking those questions. Yeah. But I think that is some of the most powerful work that we can do. What is coming up? What is this reflecting? What is it? But again, we've got to take the breath. We've got to jump out of that tornado. We've got to do something.
Yeah, and let me say, I don't know one HR talent acquisition professional who should not at some point have a therapist to help them with some of this work. I mean, if you want to be a leader of people, you have to know yourself really, really well, okay? And that's what they're there for. So that's number one. And number two is the power of a community, like what we have now. We didn't have it 10 years ago. We did not have it 15 years ago. Kelly and I have been in this space long enough to tell you there was a time when you were taught, do not share your problems with other HR professionals. Don't tell them our secrets of talent attraction and retention. Don't share anything. Just keep it to yourself. What we do it was almost like what we do in our family, we keep in our family. That was the vibe in HR, right? And it was insane. And you saw people really feeling lonely. And I think the beauty of 2021 is we don't have that anymore. We are all available to each other. The conversations that Kelly and I have each week with people that are not only paid clients, but people in our community and our DMs and our emails, we are all here for each other. So when you're being brave and when you're asking for help and when you're feeling vulnerable and uncomfortable, just know there's a community of people behind you, that all of us women have been there. And it's not just women, men struggle with this too, but I will tell you, it's mostly the women in HR who struggle with this. And so we have each other. And I don't know, if you can try and rely on that a little bit more, maybe it'll make you feel less like you're alone in this battlefield. You know, it's like, it's not. We're all being chased by the bear. We just learned how to cope with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken a lot about kind of Brené Brown today, haven't we? But I think, you know, two of her, but like huge. I think the Gifts of Imperfection, and I thought it was just me. I swear to God, I was gifted the gifts in 2030. It was at the end of my burnout, actually, just before I started my company. I was gifted the Gifts of Perfection, and I can remember reading this book, and it was written for me.
Yeah, me too.
Right? It wasn't written for anybody else. It was written for me. This was everything that I had been feeling for years in this book, and it was like, oh, like I could breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first, like, this isn't just me. We are all experiencing this. And then when I think I started to look more into kind of Brené Brown and stuff then, and then I thought it was just me. And again, read that. It was like, this book has been written for me. But that was just something in it. But you're absolutely right. The fact that I think we assume it's just us, like it's my problem, it's my fear, it's my worry, it's my blame, it's my accountability, responsibility, my exhaustion, my stress, you know, whatever it is that it may be. And that's not to take any of that away. You know, again, we've been saying right since the beginning of the pandemic, haven't we? Like, you know, we're all on the same ocean, but we're not all in the same boat. Some of us are going through it in yachts, and some of us are going through it in little rubber dinghies that we're having to stick stuff across. But just from sharing some of this, sharing some of these shared experiences and shared views and shared feelings, that doesn't mean that all of us will have been in exactly the same situation. But many of us will probably be able to talk about the time that we felt really fearful. Many of us will be able to talk about the time that we felt most vulnerable. Many of us will be able to talk about the time that we felt most stressed, most worried, most angered, and actually how we got through it and what it was that we did about it. And we don't have to feel alone in it.
Right. And then we don't have to shame ourselves. Like, I love, there are very few, but the two of us are among these. I love when an HR leader can say to me, God, I was in such a bad spot a couple months ago. I was blaming my team for things. And then I had to realize, whoa, it wasn't them. And I apologized to them and I let them know that was a result of my exhaustion and fatigue. I'm like, whoa, talk about self-awareness, right? Not shaming yourself for the blaming, shaming, accountability spiral that you're in. Actually recognizing it and then maybe apologizing to those that you kind of damaged along the way. I mean, there's a lot to this because as HR leaders, people are looking up to you. You are very much a figure in that organization that people do look to. And so you have to kind of decide what example you're setting.
Yeah. And you will make mistakes, won't you? You're not going to get it right all of the time. But again, that example that you just get, I've just realized I've done this to my team and I had to go and apologize to everybody. Going and apologizing to people can be one of the biggest lessons and one of the greatest things that you can do as a role model and someone to look up to within that organization, because again, it shows that you are human and it shows that you have emotions and it shows that you do make mistakes and you do have bad days and you want to be better and you want to do better and create better for the people around you. It's not all, you know, it isn't all shiny lights and everything's brilliant, because that's not life. That's just not how life works.
I love when, you know, another great way that people show that empathy is like, let's say your head of recruiting does come to you to say, here's the situation with the data, we're not giving the experience we want, we need 3 more people on the team. I love when an HR leader will say, thank you for coming to me. I know this wasn't easy to do. I appreciate you letting me know. Let's call a meeting with the CFO. Acknowledging that conversation is hard. because pretty much anyone coming to your office with that is scared. And I think that's another beautiful way to acknowledge that we're all in this together.
Totally.
You know, when someone tells me they need a raise or they want more money and there's an insecurity in their voice, and you know, I always acknowledge it. Like, I'm glad you said something. I'm glad you're standing for your worth. It's like we practice what we preach by also how we treat each other.
Absolutely. And ourselves.
Yeah.
Some of this has got to start with us. If we're being kind to everybody else but constantly berating ourselves, somewhere there's going to be that disconnect in our values again.
I love it. This was a really important week, so I hope everyone listening got something to take away. And then in 2 weeks' time, let's decide what we want to talk about. If anyone has any more they want to pull out of this, obviously there's a lot of different ways we could take this, but we have to address what's happening in our community right now.
Absolutely.
So we can grow and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, we could keep on going, but we're going to leave it there. You can find Laura on Twitter, Instagram. Where else are you? Twitter and Instagram.
YouTube is Learn with Laura HR. So I have all of our previous videos, and then I do a video usually once a week as well. And then Kelly's over on kellyswingler.com.
Yeah. And then
Coaching
LinkedIn.
People Leaders on Instagram.
Yeah. Coaching People Leaders on Instagram. Kelly Swingler on Twitter, YouTube, Clubhouse. We're loving a bit of Clubhouse. But yeah, lovely to see what. But yeah, if you've got questions, comments, observations, let us know. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, and we will have no doubt another interesting topic, or maybe more of the same. We will see what comes up over the next.
Stay well, everybody. Be kind.
Stay well, keep smiling. Take care.